It was the dead season in Derry, Maine. The month when the clouds hung low like a sagging ceiling, heavy with snow but never quite letting it fall. The trees stood naked and gaunt against the sallow sky. Perfect weather for a man running from deadlines and demons. Jacob Ellis wasn't looking for inspiration, he was running from failure. A literary darling once, now just a footnote, with 2 flops behind him and a publisher breathing down his neck. He packed up what little pride he had left, rented the old Holloway House on the edge of town, and promised himself that this would be the place to write again, or at least to disappear quietly. The locals were classic Maine, polite but cold. At Murphy's Diner, they called him that fella from away, and their smiles didn't quite reach their eyes. When Jacob mentioned renting the Holloway place, a long dead hush fell over the counter. "Strange choice," muttered an old man in a Red Sox cap. "Place ain't had a tenant in near 20 years. Jacob smiled awkwardly, sipped his coffee, and decided not to ask why. The house was bigger than he needed. 3 floors, creaky floorboards, wallpaper peeling like sunburnt skin. The kind of place that could rot your thoughts if you weren't careful. He set up shop on the 2nd floor, converting a dusty old study into his makeshift writing room. The first night it came. A whisper from the attic. At first, he thought it was the wind sneaking through the eaves. But when it whispered again, soft, childlike, tugging at the edge of hearing, he froze. "Cold up here," it breathed. Jacob rubbed his arms, chalked it up to isolation and the whiskey he'd nursed before bed, and tried to sleep. Days passed, and the words on Jacob's laptop remained stubbornly blank, but the attic whispers grew more insistent. "Please, so cold." Sometimes Jacob would wake to find the attic door ajar, even though he swore he'd shut it. Dusty footprints, small and bare, appeared on the staircase. He stopped going to the diner. The locals stared too hard now, like they knew what was happening, like they were waiting to see how long he'd last. The boy's voice always sounded near, but never clear. Like a broken radio transmission trapped in the wood. When Jacob finally worked up the nerve to explore the attic, he found an old child's toy box covered in mold. Inside, yellowed newspaper clippings, brittle drawings of stick figures, and a photograph of a young boy in a baseball cap, smiling weakly. Scrawled in fading ink on the back, "Tommy, age 9, missing since 1984. Jacob cornered the old man from the diner one stormy evening, desperate for answers. "Holloway's boy," the old man rasped. "Disappeared in the winter of '84. Wasn't the only one either. Kids vanished every few years. Folks say the house eats them. Sheriff called it runaways or bad luck, but we all knew better. House always gets hungry." The old man leaned in, whispering like a conspirator. "You shouldn't have gone up there." Jacob dove into town archives, unearthing stories of vanished children stretching back nearly a century. Always around the Holloway property, always in the dead season. But one article hit him like a fist to the gut. 1989, 6-year-old Jacob Ellis found wandering Route 5, barefoot, frostbitten, claiming to have escaped the Hollow House. His own face stared back at him from a grainy black and white photo. Memory, long buried, began to rise like bile. A basement room, dark and wet, the cold breath of something ancient behind the walls. A boy's hand slipping from his grip. "Tommy." That night, Jacob returned to the attic. The air was heavy with rot and mildew. The voice was no longer a whisper, it was a sob. "Help me," Tommy cried. Jacob followed the voice to a rotted floorboard. Beneath it, skeletal remains curled like a sleeping child, still wearing the tatters of a baseball cap. A presence rose behind Jacob, colder than death. The walls pulsed. The house, alive and hungry, remembered him. "You left me," Tommy whimpered. Jacob sank to his knees. "No, I didn't know. I forgot." "Come with me," the boy's voice urged, sweet as poisoned honey. The attic door slammed shut. In town, the lights flickered. At Murphy's Diner, the old man shook his head. Another one gone. Weeks later, the house stood silent under a heavy snow. The "for rent" sign swayed in the wind. But late at night, when the wind dies down, passers-by swear they can hear 2 voices now, one older, one young, whispering in the attic. "Cold up here."